Hello, this is Sam Aunai. My schematic plan purpose is really to provide a guide to visually guide me towards an effective, efficient, ethical public management. I'm really looking for the who, the what, the why, and the how and the when to enhance legitimacy in public administration. In my own work, I'd like to ensure that I understand the who, the what, the why, the when, and how in regards to public administration and bureaucracy. Essentially, this is how I see the schematic foundation of things. I believe the Constitution should be, as public administrator, the Constitution should be our premier and guide in everything that we do. We need to ensure that we uphold the Constitution, we may uphold the laws and work to implement the laws according to the Constitution. And ultimately, we are accountable to the people, and so therefore we have to have this in mind. We have to serve the people. And in serving the people, we need to ensure that we are accountable to the people and that the services that we provide are effective, and that ultimately enhances the legitimacy of the work that we do as public administrator. And these are the three pillars that I believe guide the work for which we do to serve the people. And essentially also will help to enhance legitimacy in the bureaucracy. Also based on the foundational perspective from a theoretical perspective, as well as a metaphor, as well as Christian ethical responsibilities that we have as public administrators. The who in regards to legitimate bureaucracy, it's the people. One of the things that Hummel pointed out in his text is that oftentimes the bureaucracy is seen as inhuman. It focuses on structures, on processes and procedures, and not the people. And so therefore, because of that component, oftentimes the people do not necessarily see the bureaucracy in a favorable light. Some of the dissertations that were shared during this semester that they really help us to recognize that we need to serve the people are these two dissertations. The one, perceived government legitimacy, as well as does bureaucracy move the needle on trust. The other dissertation that I found was on the bureaucratic influence in congressional roll call voting, which provided a little bit more angle in regards to the role the public has in influencing public policy, and also the role that the bureaucracy has in this regard. Ultimately, these help us to recognize that our focus should be on serving the people and with whom we have responsibilities over. The what in legitimate bureaucracy, and these are essentially what I believe are the three pillars of public administration that help to enhance representative and legitimate bureaucracy, and that are accountability, effectiveness, and of course legitimacy. The accountability notion is that we should be accountable. The public administration and bureaucracy as a whole should be accountable to the people with whom it serves, and that the services that we provide need to be effective. Sometimes the government and the private sector get into public-private partnerships, but some of the services that are provided by the government will be done through the private sector. The question that needs to be asked is, would these services be more effective or more efficient? Efficiency is not the same as effectiveness. And so therefore, and this becomes a major concern, especially when we're dealing with the health and the well-being of the people. And so this has to be something that we look into for consideration. Getting X number of trash cans collected within a specific time frame is not the same as looking at it would providing this service be effective to the health, would that impact the health and well-being of the people? Those are two separate things that public administrators need to consider. And these were some of the dissertations that provided some additional understanding in regards to representation, as well as trust, and within the bureaucracy itself, help us to enhance our knowledge in regards to these angles for legitimate bureaucracy. The how in legitimate bureaucracy, some of the theories that guide the work of legitimate and representative bureaucracy includes the work by J. Donald Kingsley. He coined the phrase representative government, which also followed the work by Crislow, who echoed the work by Kingsley in regards to representative bureaucracy, essentially the theory that the bureaucracy should be reflective of the people it serves, but it should also be able to advocate or represent the needs of the people with whom it serves, as well as the work by Max Weber in regards to legitimacy and management theory and bureaucracy. These were some of the texts that helped to enhance knowledge, as well as the writings of these three individuals, as well as looking at it from the angle of the work compiled by Chaffetz and Hyde. They were the editors of the classics of public administration. They included the work by Weber and others in regards to bureaucratic theory and legitimacy, as well as public administration as a whole. The how in regards to the metaphors as espoused by Morgan. I like these three metaphors looking at the culture, organisms, and brain. Of course, culture looks at it, and organizational culture impacts the way agencies do things, and it could be different from agency 1 to agency 2. Likewise, organisms. Organizations should be mindful of the environments. It should be open to the environments for which they are in. And then the brain, using the brain as what the brain essentially functions to help the other parts of the body. Likewise, from the organizational public administration perspective, ultimately what these metaphors portray is the elements of independence, but also interdependence, as well as thinking outside the box, as well as flexibility and adaptability to their environments, as well as the systems for which they operate. And so there should be elements of those within the system of public administration itself. Why should we do this? Looking at it from ethical standards. And there are three components to the ethics for which I want to speak on here, and that is from the duty, the motives, and the power. The work by Blackburn and Nyburn speak a lot about ethics and morality, especially from the responsibility as a duty we should uphold. We should have a morals or the ethical consideration to do the work based on our duty to do good, duty based on the law, and for which we need to do these things, as well as motive. It's good to do things based on responsibility and duty, but it's also more important to do it based on our own moral motives, our own internal moral motives, such as what Blackburn had noted here, is that the core morality lies not in what we do, but in our motives in doing it. As therefore, it speaks when the moral worth is at issue, what counts is not the action which one sees, but those inner principles of action that one does not see. And that becomes an angle of motive. What is our motive for doing things? And hopefully is a motive based on our own moral standard to do good. And then power should be limited. Power should not be unlimited, because it has the potential to erode the ethical consideration in doing things right. And so these are the things for which public administrators must and should consider in this regard. And then the why and the when from a Christian application perspective. These scriptures from New Testament talks about that we are accountable to the Lord for our words and also for our actions, and that we need to work and that faith without work is dead, and that we ultimately need to serve God but serve the people through these verses. And so from a public administration perspective, these are some things that we need to look at it from a Christian perspective: accountability, work, and service. There are ultimately some forces that drive or restrain the work that we do. Driving forces, of course, because of the role of public administration and bureaucracy, and that is to implement laws. There are processes and procedures that drive us to do the work that we do, which oftentimes can be a restraining angle as well, because there may be elements of inflexibility based on the procedures that public administrators have designed. There's often the element of red tape. It takes a long time to get things done. Other driving forces is legitimate and representative bureaucracy. Of course, looking at it from the angle that, the forces being that public administrators sometimes see themselves as being advocates, and that they represent the needs of the people with whom they serve, which is fantastic. But then looking at it, the restraining force as, this could be an element of limited resources, but people could be peer pressured into doing things that they may not necessarily want to do, which could get into, there may be some self-interest, which is another restraining force, that bureaucrats and public administrative officials may pursue things based on their own self-interest to maintain their programs and maintain their jobs, but may not necessarily be in the best interest of the public or the people. Again, to recap, legitimate bureaucracy from a schematic foundation. The Constitution should be our guide, and that ultimately we are responsible, we are accountable to the people. Our services to the people need to be effective and ultimately enhances legitimacy, which ultimately improves and helps to ensure that the bureaucracy has functioned in a way that reflects the theoretical perspectives of representative bureaucracy, legitimate bureaucracy, and management bureaucracy, as well as organisms of the brain, culture, from Morgan's perspective, but in keeping in mind the ethical consideration and Christian considerations that we must always have, and that the bureaucracy cannot have unlimited power. It needs to have limited power, or else who's going to check the work of the bureaucracy is one of the questions that I've read, is that who's going to check the work of the bureaucracy. And so we always need to work with that mind and frame, and having the Constitution as our guide. Thank you.